folks. I'm going to do a quick piece about the deep state. So what I want to do basically moving forward is take some key concepts and ideas and words, vocabulary, things that we discuss that I run into all the time in my particular reading. Like when somebody says PFOS or, what is that? Something like that. Well, today we'll talk about the deep state. What is that? Do we have a deep state? So, the deep state is a thing. It's not conspiracy fiction. It's a conspiracy theory. There's lots of empirical evidence, many lines of evidence pointing to a deep state. But the definition of it is nebulous, difficult, and shifts around a bit depending on who you talk to. And of course, all definitions assume that we have a democracy and somehow it's being subverted by the deep state. I don't think we have a democracy, really. I mean, we have a sham of a democracy. But the deep state is explanatory, in my opinion, of that. But of course, there's been many books written on the subject. So my primary source is from Aaron Good. He wrote American Exception, and it's all about the deep state. He's a political scientist and historian. He has degrees in history and political science. He was a teacher, he did this incredible project with fantastic references. You can learn a lot just from looking at where he got his information. Anyway, it's a good book. There's a podcast that covers him at Geopolitical Economy Report, which is really good if you prefer video content. But of course, this isn't my only source. I've been reading on the deep state for years and years, and all of us have heard it bandied about, either derogatorily or pointed to as a conspiracy theory or something to panic about. Generally, people's understanding of these things is fairly shallow because they're getting their information from TV and so on. So they're just listening to the script that's read by the attractive people on TV. And it's usually presented as a way to attack the other side. So, we have two teams in the United States and you're for or against one of the teams. And, you enjoy the game, basically, without knowing much about how it works. So it's a lot of things, the deep state, but primarily it's the hegemony of organized money over society. And that's not really hard to imagine, really. You may not be able to define the deep state perfectly, but you can see it. You can read about it. It's right out there in the open if you want to look. But of course, there probably are elements of it that are much more hidden, opaque, smoke-filled rooms, conspiratorial, and so on and so forth. So, for example, check this out. BlackRock goes from 5 trillion to 10 trillion. Vanguard Group goes from something like 4 trillion to 7 trillion, and State Street, these are all big hedge funds and money managers, goes from something like 2 to 4 billion since the pandemic, basically. So they're doubling their holdings, their money under management. Of course, that's not their money, but they can invest it where they want to invest it. And there are all kinds of special interests and corporate interests that are interested in the money. And so primarily our system is about profits first. It's a capitalist system, a neoliberal capitalist system. And the interests of capital are protected while the interests of the people, if you look at any poll, people say they want this, that, and the other thing, and no administration ever really delivers on it. You get these little wins here and there in Congress and the courts, and they're quickly overturned by the next administration. We have presidential elections every 4 years. A lot of these venal careerist senators and Congress people need tons of money to stay in office, and you know who's telling them what to do. They have to go with the money. So anyway, that's a pretty amazing gain of capital over a short period of time. So it never trickles down. That's a myth. The trickle-down economics of the Reagan era. That's, there are all these narratives and stories meant to keep people paying attention at Plato's wall, the shadow puppets on the wall that are all exciting and interesting and hold our attention, so we don't really think about why things don't seem to be right. So whether you're far left or far right or some centrist type on either the left or the right, everyone always has this feeling that things just aren't going the way they should be, And hence the game keeps going because you have winners and losers every 4 years or every 2 years or whatever. And people can root for their team and get all excited and emotional about it. So another aspect of the deep state, obviously, are these three-letter agencies like the CIA, NSA, FBI, etc. And there are many agencies. You can Google that and see a little chart with all the many, many agencies, security agencies and law agencies and whatever. And then you have the think tanks and all of these groups, all of these organizations that are there to preserve and present a certain narrative and to protect capital. Okay. Big business, it's a thing. And, our country's been about big business. You can talk Madison, Madisonian or whatever. But, and John Locke, obviously. Locke is the thing. He's very interesting. You should read Locke. Anyhow, going back to the beginning of our country, the United States of America after the Revolution and the development of the Constitution and the Bill of Rights and all that kind of thing, we've been expansionist and we've been about business. And so whether we're going to take Hawaii or the Philippines or Indonesia, meddling in Central and South America or whatever, it's always to serve big business. So the big thing that the oligarchs were pissed off about after Yeltsin, when Yeltsin left and Russia became a country, a state, was that they were not going to be just a red carpet for Western oligarchs and big business. They wanted to do things differently, and that made everybody really mad. So instantaneously, Putin wasn't going along with it, so he's got hell to pay from day one, regardless of whether you think he's a statesman or a good or a bad guy. It doesn't really matter. You go against the man, which is Uncle Sam, and you get knocked down, you get bashed, you get bombed, you get sanctioned. These banking institutions are part of the big state. People talk about global institutions that protect the West as part of it. But basically, these things exist. They do their thing, and you can watch it day in and day out and read about it. It's not like I say, it's a conspiracy theory in the sense that it has evidence, mounds of evidence, not a conspiracy fiction. So anyway, yeah, the banks are part of it. The security state, the Pentagon, DARPA. And DARPA and the security state has ties with academia, MIT and so on. You can listen to people like Noam Chomsky talk about that. And these partnerships, public, private, and academic, and agency partnerships, create all the big tech. It's military industrial complex driven. Even the internet and the technology I'm using to talk to you now is part of that. It was very accelerated because of our need to control the world's resources and business to make money, whether it's the robber barons and railroads, or whether it's rare earths and titanium and mining and the energy, oil, the Middle East, the whole thing. So the security state is very important. It helped to accelerate a lot of technological progress and development over the years. Obviously, modern technological industrial society, fueled by fossil fuels since the 19th century, has enabled us to greatly accelerate progress in science, engineering, technology, which isn't a bad thing necessarily, but the externalities of these projects can be extremely destructive. And we don't seem to care about that. Even if people do care about that, their concerns are not paid attention to because we're more interested in protecting profits.
Money. Money makes the world go round, the world go round, the world go round. Money makes the world go round, it makes the world go round. A mark, a yen, a buck or a pound, a mark, a yen, a buck or a pound is all that makes the world go round. That clinking, clanking sound can make the world go round. Money, 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 money. If you happen to be rich and you feel like a nice entertainment, you can pay for a gay escapade. If you have...
So anyhow, regime change wars, meddling in the affairs of sovereign states over and over again, right? If the Shah doesn't do right by Uncle Sam, he gets in trouble. If Allende, you go on and on and on, there's been so many, but it's right out there. You can look at it if you want to pay attention to it. So where do the politicians get their marching orders, if not from the people? A plebiscite, a mandate, a vote. They don't listen to us. The polls always bear that out. People say they don't want to support this war. It doesn't matter. It gets full support. People don't like what's going on in the Middle East. Doesn't matter. It gets full support. There's no international law. We don't care about international law. International legal organizations can make pronouncements, but they can't enforce the law. America has the power to do stuff, to bomb people, to sanction people. So it is the law. It's like when Nixon says when the president does it, it's not illegal. And Trump believes that too, and so does every president. But anyway, that's why we have the rules-based order, because we can change the rules all the time. We can lower the basket or raise the basket, keep playing the game. The idea that we care about international law is a joke. Of course we have law, we have courts, and we have a legal system. But does it work? Is it working well for the common folks? Your opinions may differ, but I don't think it does. People at the top skate all the time, and normal people just get bashed. And we have a for-profit legal system and prison system, so there's that. Want to keep the beds full, otherwise the stock price goes down. So all of these institutions and organizations, whether they're public or private, hidden or overt, we might refer to as, a deep state. So here's a quote by Peter Dale. It is a power not derived from the Constitution, but outside and above it. It's more powerful than the public state. And why wouldn't it be? Because the public state depends on money, and the money comes in from these donations. There's always money. the United States central bank can print money anytime it wants to, quote unquote, print. But it will print it to support corporations, to support the wealthy and powerful. So that's an aspect, another, glittering kernel or facet of the deep state, if you will. So it's an overworld of private wealth, basically, sitting at the top of everything. And, if you look at history, it's always been that way. The Roman Empire, kings, and so on. And kings have always answered to the court or to their aristocracy. They don't want to piss off the other landowners, so that their power is checked a bit by that. So if you're an NRX guy, a reactionary, and you think you're going to have a king with power, that's never going to happen. There's always going to be somebody that allows that king to stay in power and not get his head chopped off. You see that all the time in the Roman Empire and Byzantium and all history, right? Kings that are not good get killed, but very rarely by the people. And I think reactionaries don't want the people to kill the king, because the people are a rabble. They're stupid. They don't know anything. They're dumb. So they're dangerous, a bunch of dangerous, crazy savages. You want the powerful people to decide when the king has to go. Take that, be that as it may. So there are various descriptions of the deep state, right? So conservative-leaning folks might say something like this, and this is where I got this from ChatGPT, just to make it fucking easy for me. So conservative-leaning people might say something like, the deep state is a shadowy network of entrenched bureaucrats, intelligence officials, and other elected government employees working to subvert the will of the people and undermine the current administration. I always find that ironic. There's always contradictions in the way people see things, because on one hand, government is the problem, as Reagan and Thatcher pointed out, but they still have a government. They're still part of the government, and they still think that the bureaucrats and whoever, these people with, these nasty people in these organizations, are subverting their government, the one that they want. If it's the other people's government, there's no deep state being subverted. And it's funny because they don't look at the whole picture, the institutional aspect of it, the systemic and structural aspect of it. They just see it as somebody going against what their team wants to do. So the liberal-leaning folks say something like, the deep state refers to a deep-rooted network of corporate interests, military-industrial complex, and wealthy elites influencing government policies behind the scenes to serve their own agenda. Well, yeah, and it's always been like that. I mean, when is it not? You just study history, you know that. You don't have to get into sociology too much, or anthropology, or political philosophy, or political science to understand that these people serve their agenda, and they have the power to make that, to influence people. So if you're really super wealthy, if you want to be an influencer and really have agency and really affect change and really influence the world, you'll become super filthy, dirty, stinking rich, uber wealthy, because that's the best way you're gonna do that. So political science academics, so John Sides is a university professor at Vanderbilt. He's pretty mainstream, nothing too exciting about his work, but it's interesting. There's so much work on the deep state out there if you want to look into it. So he says the concept of the deep state is often used to describe the influence of unelected bureaucrats and agencies on government decision making, potentially undermining democratic accountability. I find this fun because democratic accountability, are they accountable? Every time we vote for somebody, they never do what we voted for. And you have a group of people voting for a person. Any politician can't make everybody happy. They're going to be able to do some things and not be able to do other things. But primarily, they're never going to be able to do all the things that we want them to do because they don't really answer to us. They answer to their donors. And they get subsumed. They get digested. They get overtaken, absorbed by the system. And very quickly, whether you're Obama or Bush or Trump or Biden or anybody else, you quickly find out who you're working for. And all these people, elites and people that the clerks and the lawyers and the professionals and the communications people, the PR folks, everybody, the professionals are educated in a certain way. They're a certain tribe of people. And just like Patrick Bateman, they're trained to just want to fit in, not to piss off people above them until they're above those people. You don't bite the hand that feeds you. You cut the hand off when that hand is below you. So he who has the power controls the spice or whatever. And you see that in every historical story you could possibly think of. And so democratic accountability, I don't think so. I don't think there is much. And I think we know who rules anyway. If it's an oligarchy, I don't think kingdom's going to avoid the oligarchy. It's just going to be called something else. The plutocracy will still be in place. So the deep state refers to a hidden network of power brokers within the government and other institutions who operate beyond the reach of democratic mechanisms, exerting influence over policy decisions. That's a nice definition as well. He mentions the Constitution. Well, the Constitution wasn't written in stone, and it was written hundreds of years ago. So can the Constitution be changed? Can we have a new one for the 21st century? I don't see why not, but we're not really thinking in those terms anymore. And people don't want to hear about politics because they're sick of it. Politics, you don't care about politics, but politics cares about you. I forgot who said that. But anyway, it's sad because we should be working on some kind of a new constitution, but we don't even know what the real problems are. The structural systemic problems, where they come from, how they originate, how they're perpetuated, and so on. So how can we even think about it? It's much easier just to pick a team and be a fanatic supporter of that team and hate the other guy, want to kick their butt. And you hear it all the time with Trump and whatnot about it, and Biden, about how tough they are and how they're going to kick ass and take names around the world. And it's like the rest of the world's saying, fuck off already, for Christ's sake. We want to do things the way we want to do things. And then you come up with this multipolar situation and BRICS and whatnot. It's bound to happen. All empires fall, so whatever. But people don't generally care about it because they don't want to be bothered. It's just depressing or stressful. So we just hang around and wait and see what happens. And we're happier if we're emotional and excited about it. So we watch the show, the shit show. The Great Game is just another Netflix series. So Mike Lofgren describes the deep state in his book, The Deep State, The Fall of the Constitution and the Rise of a Shadow Government. So yeah, the Constitution. So it is a hybrid association of elements of government and parts of top-level finance and industry that is effectively able to govern the United States with only limited reference to the consent of the governed as normally expressed through elections. And I think that's a pretty interesting definition that I kind of like a little bit, but in a nutshell, kind of. So I'll say that again. It's a hybrid association. That's interesting. Of elements of government and parts of top-level finance and industry that is effectively able to govern the United States with only limited reference to the consent of the governed, as normally expressed through elections. So, do you live in a democracy or a plutocracy? Who runs the show? Who calls the shots? The deep state is a thing, so I would recommend you look into it. Read the book, American Exception. That's incredibly interesting and worth reading. If you're going to read one book about these types of things, I'd recommend that one. Yeah, so that's all for now. Thank you for watching. I appreciate it. I hope you got something out of this, and I'm going to do more short ones like this in the future. Take good care. Have a great weekend. Bulliam T. Out.